And thank you so much for coming this evening. Question. It's a question I ask every month during this series, but I think I'll get a couple of takers this time. By a show of hands, how many are attending this lecture series for the very first time? Ah, great. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. Very quick introduction concerning me, and I'll let those that have been attending this monthly series for many years kind of fill in the blanks, and we'll see how we do. Kind of fun way to start off. Hey, 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 hey. No wise guys, no wise guys. So, good evening. My name is Robert Landau. That's right. And I am originally from New York City. I got that right. Correct. I have been lecturing here for how many years on a monthly basis?
40.
40? 40? You're going to scare all the new people away. Well, it doesn't feel like 40 to me. Why, I think it was just yesterday, but actually it's been, I think, about 5 or 6 years, if I'm not mistaken now. And each month it is an absolute joy, except for some people. We, ladies and gentlemen, are in the midst of a big band all-star lecture series, and if you haven't attended this series before, this is how we will proceed. As you know, my name is Robert Landau. I am a public speaker, and I do not pretend to be an expert in anything that I speak about. Rather, I love research, and certainly concerning tonight's topic, the one and only Bing Crosby, everybody in this space knows at least 2 or 3 things, I would guess, about the great Bing Crosby. But my hope is, by the time we finish this evening, that you will walk away from this presentation knowing, well, maybe 3 or 4 more things that you might not have known before. So, with that in mind, and I don a more studious look, according to some people. Oh, I know this gets pretty dicey here. This gets pretty dicey in the balcony, as you might know. But let's start off with some quotes that, of course, are directly attributable to the great Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby once said this: "Once or twice, I've been described as a light comedian. I consider this the most accurate description of my abilities I've ever seen." Or, how about this? "I think popular music in this country is one of the few things in the 20th century that have made great strides in reverse." Or, how about this? "Honestly, I think I've stretched a talent which is so thin it's almost transparent over a quite unbelievable term of years." Modest? Yes. Slightly distant and withdrawn? Well, yeah. Opinionated? You bet. But to get another perspective, ladies and gentlemen, let's see what others have also had to say about the great Bing Crosby. First, Johnny Mercer once said this: "He's an unphony man. He's so distant, but he's also a very genuine man." Phil Harris said this: "A lot of people don't understand him because he goes his own way, minds his own business, picks his own friends, and lives his own life." And a little bit of a piece from the one and only Bob Hope, and it goes like this: "In one picture, Bing and I were to do a scene where both of us were in a double bed. But when Bing came to bed, he was still wearing his hat. It was a fedora. So I said this to him, bingo, nobody comes to bed wearing a hat. So how about removing it? He refused. Evidently, Bob goes on to say, he didn't have his toupee on, and he was too lazy to put it on. Then, he goes on to say, the director asked him to remove his hat. And when he still wouldn't do it, the director sent for 3 executives from the front office and explained the problem to them. One of them happened to have been the head of the studio. Freeman said he'd handle it and went over to Bing, who was in bed with his hat on, and said this, Mr. Crosby, is everything all right? Are you happy with the picture? And Bing nodded, why, yes, everything is just fine. So Freeman turned to the director and barked, okay, roll 'em. And he walked away. They were scared to death to say anything to Bing to upset him, so we ended up shooting the scene with Bing's hat on, and I covered it with some joke like, do you always get your nightcaps from Stetson? Does anybody know Bing's given name? Bing's given name. Ah, very good, very good. In case you didn't hear, it was Harry Lillis Crosby, and he was born in the house that his father built in Tacoma, Washington on May 3rd, 1903. He was the 4th of 7 children. Shortly after, Harry's family moved to Spokane, Washington. How did Harry become Bing? And why would I even ask you this question so early in the proceedings? Well, there's a good reason for that, folks, because at age 6, Harry became Bing. Does anybody know how that occurred? Gotcha. And you know what? I'm not going to tell you. So there. Thank you and good night. Now you're going to have to beg me to come back on. Oh, thank you. Oh, yes. So here's the answer, since you were so kind to ask me back. There was a special column, folks, in the local paper called the Bingville Bugle. The Bingville Bugle. Bing loved that piece and took his name from there. So from now on, Harry was known as... What a sharp group you are. That's right. So, young Bing was very, very, very lucky, as music was always a big thing in the home where he grew up. His parents loved music, and they made absolutely sure that it was always around. Bing's mother, who was known as a very tough taskmaster, actually had the brilliant idea of sending her son to partake of what type of lessons? Singing, voice lessons, that's right. And there was somebody who was really big at that time in the world of entertainment, and I want you to tell me who it was. He, as a hint, was credited as making the very first sound motion picture, and it happened to have been a musical. Al Jolson. Very good, very good. Bing absolutely loved and idolized the great Al Jolson. He did so much so that he would imitate the great Mr. Jolson every night in his room, in his home. But There was a bit of an issue here, folks. The music that Crosby was learning in his voice lessons didn't happen to be the same music that Mr. Jolson was so famous for singing that Bing was now imitating. So, Bing quit his voice lessons and decided to become a lawyer. A lawyer. And of course, Bing's parents were pretty happy with their son's decision, but eventually, as we all know now, Bing was not. So, one day he decided to purchase a drum set and received it through the mail and taught himself to play well enough to be asked to join the local high school band. Bing sang, folks, and played drums with the band for over a year and earned quite a good living doing so. So much so that a little while later he decided to drop out of Gonzaga University during his senior year and refocus his attentions on a career in livestock management. No, I'm just joking. You got to do that every once in a while just to make sure you still have them, you know? Wearing bright shirts doesn't always help. But you're right. Of course, he decided to pursue a career in music, and thank God for that. And there was also a very special reason for this decision. One of Bing's closest friends happened to be a member of that band, and his name was Al Renker. Al convinced Bing to form an act which would just feature the two of them. Al happened to be an incredible thinker, and he was also a great entrepreneur. So one night, he must have said the following to Bing: "Hey, Bingo, we're doing okay with the band the way it is, but how about we think about taking things to the next level? Bingo, what do you say? We both got the talent to do it." And I think that Bing must have said yes right away, because the boys formed an act of their own and started to get some really great gigs around Spokane. The two were a perfect act and complemented each other very well. The boys quickly outgrew Spokane and decided to set their sights higher. What you believe, you can achieve, they must have often thought, because guess where they decided to take their careers to the next level? Where was that? LA. Okay, I'm hearing New York, I'm hearing Seattle, I'm hearing LA. By show of hands, how many think it was New York? By show of hands, how many think it was LA? By show of hands, how many really don't care where it was? It's scary when more people raise their hand for the last question than the previous two combined. Actually, folks, it was Mountain Mound, Minnesota. No, just checking again. It was Hollywood. And it just so happened that Al Renker's sister was a famous jazz singer at the time, and her name happened to have been Mildred Bailey. And guess where Mildred Bailey just happened to call home, and it had nothing to do with Mountain Mound, Minnesota. It was Hollywood. So, what do you think happened next? She helped the boys put their act on the stages of a certain circuit that was popular at the time that started with a V. Vaudeville. That is right. She helped the boys get onto the vaudeville circuit, and needless to say, they were a huge hit. One night, someone that would help take the boys to the next level just happened to be sitting in the audience. And it was none other than a band leader that I bet a lot of you know the name of. If I give you his first name, you give me his last. Ain't this fun? Aren't you glad you came tonight?
Oh, I can't.
Say yes.
Yes.
Okay. His first name was Paul. Second?
Paul Whiteman.
Whiteman. Paul Whiteman, that is right. He was immediately taken with the boys and decided to what? Offer them a job. That's right. He booked them to sing with his band at $150 a week. So, in 1926, the boys made their debuts with the Paul Whiteman Orchestra at the Tivoli Theater, way over in one of America's most prominent cities, starting with a C. Chicago. Chicago, that's right. So, while Bing was in Chicago, he could really study music the way he really wanted to. And he studied with those that made popular music popular. Names such as Bix, Beiderbecke, right? How about Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey and Joe Venuti all gave Bing a priceless education. And Bing actually never changed the way that he sang. He just perfected it and was individual enough to keep and maintain his own style and sound throughout his incredible career. Bing was now on his own, folks, and things were really hopping for him. He cut his first record in 1926 with a tune called I've Got the Girl. It was during this time that Bing established his alleged reputation as a womanizer with a bit of a drinking problem. Now, I say alleged. In fact, to that end, he even wound up in jail more than once. Bing, one time, was rear-ended while driving a date home after a night of partying. His date landed against the windshield, and Bing found himself in jail for driving under the influence. But, as so often would be the case, thank goodness Bing's career didn't suffer in the least from any of this, and it never did due to this type of thing. Even when Bing started to get really big and important gigs, he would be late, or he would even forget to show up. And these were big studio heads, radio and record execs that he was dealing with. If it had been anyone else, what do you think would have happened? The 86. In other words, there's the door. Thanks very much. But they always made an exception for Bing. Why? Because they knew exactly what they had in him. His solo singing career was about to get underway in a big way right now. In 1930, Crosby started singing with another band that you probably well know. The leader, his first name was Gus Arnheim. That's right, Gus Arnheim. And this was a gig that Bing got with Mr. Arnheim and his orchestra at the Coconut Grove Room in the Ambassador Hotel on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. The club, folks, just happened to have its own broadcast equipment. So now, Crosby's incredible voice could be heard all across California. Now, get this. Here's where things went to the next level and very quick. A famous film producer and director by the name of Mack Sennett, that's right, was one of the hundreds who would flock to see and hear Bing at the Grove in those days, and was quoted as saying the following words: "What struck me about this guy was that all the stuffed shirts at the Grove stopped dancing and gathered around the bandstand every night to watch Bing sing. They came to hear him each and every night without fail. He held them." In 1931, folks, Sennett signed Bing to do a short musical comedy film called I Surrender Dear. It was such a big hit that Bing and Sennett did 5 more of these short cinematic features. Crosby would be paid $750 for each 20-minute film that he did with Sennett. This was the same Sennett that produced a certain bunch of cops. Keystone Cops, and Charlie Chaplin. Very good. Wow. We'd be good at charades, wouldn't we? Yeah. Yeah. So think about the Keystone Cops in their movies with Sennett. Think, of course, about the great Charlie Chaplin in his movies with Sennett. And now imagine the type of things that Bing was asked to do in his films with Sennett. Bing, believe it or not, folks, was dunked in water tanks. He was chased by lions. And he was half-baked in quick rising dough. But what this did do for Bing was set him on the road to a very successful solo career. The 1930s continued to be a very good thing for him. Now he was in short films, on the radio, and singing live in clubs. And as far as radio goes, in 1936, Bing became the host of what now famous and legendary radio music show? No, good guess. Not Radio City Music Hall. Starts with a K. Starts Kraft. The Kraft Music Hall. That's right. And Bing, folks, would remain with that weekly show for no less than 12 incredibly successful years. And it is here that Bing changed the face of male singing and male singers. Many feel that Bing literally invented the word starting with a C?
Charisma.
Crooner. And it could have been charisma. Charismatic crooning, let's call it. That's right. That's right. So, question. What is the difference, folks, between singing and crooning? Aha. A hush falls over the crowd. Well, it's a difference actually between belting when you sing and casually singing like Bing did. Before Bing, male singers had to belt because most of them came from the vaudeville stage. And to be heard in the last row in those big theaters, kind of like I'm doing this evening, you had to belt to get the sound all the way to the last row, right? Oh my God, they're all asleep. No, they're up. They're up and doing fine. That's right. Now, Bing, and think of Bing Crosby singing. He would sing like he was having a conversation with you. It was that natural, folks, and that is one of the differences between crooning and singing. Crooning, very laid back, very relaxed, very calm, and you just sing as if you're speaking. And Bing really championed that style of singing. So now, finally, a major motion picture contract would be in the offing for Mr. Crosby, and his first major picture for Paramount was called The Big Broadcast of 1932, and it featured many popular names in radio in the day. This picture also happened to have been the screen debut of a very popular husband and wife comedy team that hadn't made it to pictures as of yet, but were really big on radio and had an incredible TV series for many years as well, way after. Huh? Burns and Allen. That is right. The film was so successful, folks, that a number of those type of films followed. The Big Broadcast of 1938 paired Bing with one of his best buddies of all time, Bob Hope. Between 1932 In 1971, Bing made no less than 55 full-length motion pictures. 23 of those 55 films were top 10 box office hits. Crosby was a top 10 box office star for at least 15 years. And if that isn't impressive enough, get this. For 5 consecutive years, Bing was the top box office draw in America. He was nominated 3 times for an Academy Award. He would win one for Best Actor in what 1945 film? Going My Way, that's right, in which he played what character? A priest. Anybody know the name of the priest? Father O'Malley. Very good, very good. Aren't they incredible? I say it every time, that's right. They don't know what I also say about them every time, but we won't go into that now. Bob Hope, concerning Bing's role as Father O'Malley in Going My Way, once said this: "Any time that a man with 4 kids could play a priest, well, then he would deserve to win an Oscar." Now, this was also a great time in Bing's recording career. When Bing recorded a tune called "Swingin' on a Star," it topped the charts for 9 weeks in the summer of 1944. Other songs from that film, Going My Way, also became hits. You probably know one of them. Tooraloo. And how does that go?
Oh, gosh.
You guys are incredible. You bring tears to my eyes. Give yourself a round of applause. I mean, really, totally outstanding, totally outstanding. Not only do we have smarts and brawn in the room, we got talent too. What a combo. Another tune from that picture that became a top 10 hit by Bing was Day After Forever as well. As far as Bing's recording career was concerned, get this, he recorded no less than 1,700 songs between the years of 1926 and 1977. 1,700 songs. In fact, Crosby is often referred to as the world's most successful singer when it comes to record sales. So, say today, folks, you wanted to go to Borders and buy a compact disc of Bing's tunes, you could choose, not that they would have them all in stock, from no less than 100 different compact discs of Crosby's standards. Some of his recordings have not been out of print for more than 60 years. Crosby received no less than 23 gold records, which meant that he had sales of at least 1 million copies each. He received platinum discs for his 2 best-selling songs, which were White Christmas. Anybody know the other one? No, Silent Night. Silent Night. Believe it or not, folks, White Christmas was actually written by a person of Jewish origin. Whom? Irving Berlin, 100% correct. And it was written for 1942's film Holiday Inn, which starred Crosby and you're getting it. Good work. Bing debuted White Christmas on his radio show, the Kraft Music Hall, on December 25th, 1941. It made it to #1 and stayed on the top of the charts for an incredible 11 weeks. It is Bing's best-selling recording and the best-selling Christmas single of all time. Not only that, folks, but White Christmas has sold more than 50 million copies worldwide and has been recognized as the best-selling single for more than 50 years. Wow is right. You got the full brunt of that. Yes. So, of course, a movie was also created around the song. The film White Christmas was released in 1954 with every intention of having Crosby and Astaire in the leading roles. Well, what you might not know is that Fred Astaire turned the script down, which then went to Donald O'Connor. But O'Connor had a back injury and couldn't do the film, so who was selected in his place? Danny Kaye, great, underrated actor and comedian as well. Bing's style of singing influenced so many who were to come after him. Folks like Perry, that's right, Dick Haymes, Dean Martin, who we're going to talk about next month, and Nat King Cole all studied Bing's easy type of style and delivery and really borrowed from it heavily. But there was another singer who absolutely idolized Crosby, idolized with a capital I. Anybody want to guess who that might have been? Very good. In case you didn't hear him, they said Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra. Sinatra took what Bing had established and then built upon that. To that end, Sinatra was once quoted as saying this: "When I started singing in the mid-30s, everyone was trying to copy the Crosby style, the casual king of raspy sound in the throat. Bing was on top, and a bunch of us were trying to break in. It occurred to me that maybe the world didn't need another Crosby. So I decided to experiment a little and came up with something different." When Sinatra made it big, Crosby was quoted as saying this: "Frank Sinatra is the kind of singer who comes along once in a lifetime. But why did it have to be my lifetime?" The two men were friends and respected one another all the way until 1962, when President Kennedy was going to spend the weekend in Palm Springs, California. That was also where Crosby and Sinatra happened to live. Sinatra was hell-bent on President Kennedy staying at his place, and to that end began to renovate and refit his entire compound to accommodate the president's large entourage. But Sinatra was absolutely heartbroken to learn that Kennedy would end up staying at Crosby's compound instead because, as Peter Lawford, who helped arrange the whole affair, once said this: "When Jack, the president, called me, he said that as president, he just couldn't stay at Frank's and sleep in the same bed that Sam Giancana and other hoods had slept in." Lawford goes on to say that Frank never forgave me, and he cut me off like that. He cut me out of all the movies we were set to make together and turned Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, and Joey Bishop all against me as well. Also fascinating was Bing's relationship, and we already spoke about this briefly, to the one and only legendary Mr. Bob Hope. The two met for the first time in New York City in 1932, where they played two farmers meeting on the street in an old vaudeville routine. A bigwig from Paramount just happened to have been in the audience one night, and of course wanted to feature the two in a film. An old script that was gathering dust was dug up that was once written for Burns and Allen but never used, called The Road to Mandalay. Singapore, of course, was substituted for Mandalay, and the unforgettable 7 road pictures were born. Bing was married twice. An impressive record when you think about it when it comes to Hollywood marriages, even to this day. His first wife was named Dixie. It, unfortunately, for the most part, was very much a troubled marriage. First, it was Bing's alleged drinking that affected things, and when he kind of died down, Dixie really started up. Dixie would die of ovarian cancer just before her 41st birthday, and to say the least, Bing was shattered with that news. 2 of their 4 kids would then die of self-inflicted gun wounds, and a 3rd would die of lung cancer many years later after writing a kiss-and-tell book of his life with Bing, in which Crosby was depicted as an alleged abusive father, both physically and emotionally. Bing married once again to actress Katharine Grant in 1957. She was 30 years his junior and gave him 3 children. Bing was one of the wealthiest people in Hollywood, with a fortune that some say ranged anywhere from $80 to $100 million. Some of his money was made via vast land holdings in California and oil wells in Texas. He was also a part owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates baseball team, had distribution rights to Minute Maid frozen orange juice, and owned 3 beautiful California homes. We would lose the one and only incredible Bing Crosby on October 14th, 1977, while he was in the process of playing golf. That's right. Golf, as you know, was his absolute passion. If it wasn't the horses as well. Bing, on that day, had just finished 18 holes of golf, and right after his final putt, he bowed to acknowledge the applause that he was receiving from some fans who came to watch him, and he said, "It was a great game." Then he began walking toward the clubhouse, where he suddenly collapsed of a massive heart attack. Unfortunately, the great Bing Crosby would never regain consciousness. His epitaph reads, "He was an average guy who could carry a tune." Bing Crosby may have had numerous personality quirks, but folks, who in Hollywood hasn't? When others were throwing tantrums and raising hell, creating enough fodder for Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons to write column after column after column about, Bing Crosby quietly did things his way in an almost anti-Hollywood fashion. He proved that if you quietly, steadfastly keep your eye fixed on the prize, you can certainly attain it and then some. He proved that a remarkable life and career is truly a lesson for us all. And that is, if you believe, you can achieve. Just stick to your guns and do it. Nothing more, but certainly nothing less. Thank you.